Hello, welcome back. It is week 181 on Out on That Line podcast. I'm Jeff with my co-host Alex. As always, Alex, how are we doing this week?
I'm ready to snap into a mother-licking Slim Jim, Jeff. How you doing this week?
I'm doing great. Probably better than that Slim Jim's going to be. That's for sure.
Let me talk to you. Yeah, I was like, I could totally tank the monetization of this episode from the get-go, but I pulled back at the last second. And God love me, here we are.
Yeah, that's good. We need our 35 cents.
I gotta have it. I gots to have it.
Yeah, it's better than nothing. Better than nothing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so this week we're going to talk about a new album by PUP called Who Will Look After the Dogs. Very cool album artwork. We'll talk about that when we get there. I want to talk to you a little bit about why we had to kind of postpone recording this pod. It's because I went to see Blackberry Smoke live at the Moody Theater here in Austin, Texas, Alex. You ever seen Blackberry Smoke live?
I never seen Blackberry Smoke live. Can't say that I have.
I just wanted to be able to point out that Reno ruined that for you.
Reno ruined that twice over, but we can get into that later.
Yeah. So Blackberry Smoke. So what I wanted to really talk about was one, kick-ass show. Absolute kick-ass show. Like they know how to put on a performance. Like really, really fantastic. Sounded exactly like they do on the albums. Like it was really, really good. We were like fourth row. Tickets were not very expensive. There was a lot of seats on the upper deck available. It was like I think 2,700 people can fit in that venue. So they probably had 1,700, I would say. Maybe there was room for another like 1,000 people in there. I don't know. Still a lot of people. And they crushed it. Charlie Starr, fantastic guitar player. The whole band, like being able to see that close and seeing the whole band, like they're all so good at their instruments. The bass player, just like 10 years ago, I think it was when I saw them, just looked like he was on all sorts of heroin, like some sort of depressant for sure. He's just looks like he is on cloud nine, just cruising along, but ripping bass lines. I mean, some of them are easy enough, but like you can see he's like got some complicated one. He just nailing it. I mean, everybody was so good. What I noticed before like Blackberry Smoke took the stage, Jason Scott and the High Heat, I think was the opening band. We caught the last few songs from them. They were decent. But in the middle, like when I realized is Blackberry Smoke has like traveling fans, like similar to like Fish Heads or like Grateful Dead fans, like people that follow them around. There was one guy there that said that was his 97th Blackberry Smoke show.
Jesus.
97 times seeing Blackberry Smoke. Now, again, fantastic band, but like they play the same set list through the whole tour. They might sprinkle a few songs in and out here and there, but it's generally the same thing. Like I think part of the appeal of following around Fish or Grateful Dead or one of those bands is because they never play the same set twice. Right?
Oh, right. Yeah. And it's Noodle Fest. I mean, like, or jamming, like whatever you want to call it. Like there's endless improvisation that like Blackberry Smoke's music really doesn't lend itself to. So
yeah. They had they did a couple of mashups. They did a ZZ Top song towards the end of the set, which was I mean, yeah, it was really, really good. And they
Which did it. Was it?
God, I can't remember the name. It was not one of their like the Sunglasses song or like She Got Legs or LaGrange. It was not one of their like super popular ones, but it was one I recognized. I just can't remember the name of it. I'll look it up. We'll post it in the comments, folks. And they just like ripped, but these people before the show, and all of a sudden I see them all like starting to move around, like go in the other seats and like saying hi to everybody. I'm like, there's like 100 people here that have seen Blackberry Smoke like at least dozens of times. Crazy.
That is pretty crazy. The Lil Smokies, they follow the band. Yeah. The Lil Smokies in attendance. I mean, yeah, for me, there's a certain distance that I'm willing to travel per band. Like when I said Reno ruined Blackberry Smoke, our chances of seeing them twice, it was across state lines because they were in my backyard here in the great state of Maine. They were in the great state of Vermont the day after. We had some opportunities. I'm willing to go within a certain distance for certain acts based on how much I love them, how long I've known them, how like relevant they are to the moment. Like if someone was like,
and who you're going with.
If
Mhm.
someone was like, "Hey, man, this is not something you'd ever buy for yourself, but here's 2 tickets to Sabrina Carpenter," I
Mhm.
would figure out who is the funniest person to bring to a Sabrina Carpenter concert with me, get my 95-year-old grandfather to go or something, and I would go, and they're like, "It's in fucking Portland, Oregon."
Mhm.
I'd be like, "Ah, cool, yeah, I'll get my buns out there." I don't know if I'd travel overseas for anyone. There's a chart, there's a complex tapestry to this, and I
Mhm.
love Blackberry Smoke. I can't imagine, like you said, with kind of a limited discography and like pool from which to pull, following them across state lines. But I also think it's great
Mhm.
because they're a hell of a band, and it's nice to see people that dedicated to them.
It was strange seeing the kind of the it felt like there was these people had a sense of ownership over the band because they've seen them so many times. So they're like yelling out songs for them to play and stuff. And it's like they're playing a set list, dude. They're not taking requests, you know. Um,
Yeah.
and they, so they played kind of from all their eras. So I think they have like what, maybe 6 albums, 7 albums, something like that. So they've got, but it's all they haven't strayed from the course very far on any of the albums. Like they're playing, it's you're hearing Blackberry Smoke every time. It's like when you listen to like Dirty Honey or any of those bands, like which band that is. They might play some slower versions of their songs, some acoustic songs and stuff, but it's like it's still the same band. So I feel like there's definitely like very different eras of like Grateful Dead music, where they had different influences. I don't know damn thing about Fish, don't care, but I'm sure it's the same way. But all these bands that people like truly follow around everywhere, and like Coheed gets the same treatment. Like there's people that have seen Coheed like over 100 times, like which I've seen them probably 8. So it's not like I can really like talk that much shit about them, but it's they play the same set list. It's like it's not a band that's going to like vary things a whole lot. So I understand you may want to see that show a lot, but it's like, is it worth going to 10 cities on a tour?
And chances are you're always going to hear Welcome Home. Um, it's the noodly bands, it's the jam
Hmm.
bands. Like Humphreys McGee has the same thing. Where friend of the show Eric, I think, has been to like 88 Humphreys shows, and he's been all over the place, and he'll see them like he'll figure out like, oh, I have this amount of time off, and like on this route, I can pack in like 6 shows,
Hmm.
and he'll do it. He's an freak. And that's the thing, is those kinds of bands lend themselves to, if you're not in Milwaukee on Tuesday night, you're not going to be there to hear this great thing, especially now, because I feel like tape trading is not a thing.
Hmm.
Like back in the day, that was like the proliferation of it for Grateful Dead. Like you were encouraged to go and record the show and do a little like tape trading and tape collecting and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I don't think anyone does that now. I
Yeah.
think the bands professionally record a lot of them. I know King Giz does that,
Hmm.
another band where people would travel for them. So it's like I there's something kind of cool about it. And then there's part of me that's like, I don't know, about half of those times I might have used on something else, because I understand the appeal of like, you never know what you're going to get, and it's fun. And if you have the income
Hmm.
to do it, that's great. But I just personally can't think of one I'm like that sucked into and dedicated to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I mean, one of the guys had the guy that was his 97th show had a custom like shirt with his like name on it with like Blackberry Smoke patches and stuff like that. And I'm like, Jesus.
Wow. You know, that guy does nothing but talk about that wherever he works.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
That,
he's managing like a
yeah.
Verizon wireless kiosk at the mall. And he's like, let me tell you something. It's just like the smoke say. Ain't much left of me now. And by that, I mean the Taco Bell is coursing through me. You watch the store for 20 minutes. And
Yeah.
in the meantime, why don't you listen to this deep cut? Study up.
Yeah, it was a great experience. Go see Blackberry Smoke if you have the chance, folks. Fantastic show. Truly, truly great.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
so
We love you.
let's talk a little bit about PUP, huh? You
Pup.
ready? Yeah.
Unleash the dogs.
So we have talked about PUP before with the album The Unraveling of PUP the Band. So definitely on at that point on the grouped in with like pop punk and stuff. They were certainly, I think, a little bit more experimental than a lot of those bands are going to be. They didn't get too crazy. Ones like Pink Floyd, but they would stretch the limits of like time signatures and things like that. You wouldn't typically hear in a lot of like normal, like Newfound Glory wasn't doing that kind of stuff. So to lump them in with that is a little bit. I think it just makes it sound like something it's not. I would say they're more punk. There's even a little bit of hardcore, I think, on this new album. It's really interesting to kind of hear how they've changed. But on this album, Who Will Look After the Dogs, they went from like very chaotic album covers to this one being like a very 80s feel. So when I saw that album cover, I was like, oh, maybe this is going to be, maybe they're going more like a Turnstile kind of direction, a little more melodic and all that kind of stuff. And that is not at all what we got on this album, Alex.
No, I think perhaps to my disadvantage, if not to
Mm-hmm.
bury the lead, but it reminded me a lot of the unraveling of Pup the Band, which I really liked. I really
Mm-hmm.
liked that.
I remember we were both pretty favorable on that one.
Yeah, we're both very
Yeah.
favorable. I liked I just kind of liked the lo-fi kind of sloppy DIY aspect to it. Like it sounds like shit in
Mm-hmm.
terms of the mixing and mastering. It sounds like shit. Music's great. And then you listen to it and you're like, who produced this?
Yeah.
You barely did. I don't think I can call this produced. This is rough
Let's do it
sound.
live. Let's do it live.
It's the absolute, it's peak O'Reilly. But there was like a real charm to that wasn't gimmicky. It was like it made sense for that kind of. It's like when you listen to like old Against Me demos or like old
Mm-hmm.
Bomb the Music Industry stuff, which is apt on this album. We'll get
Mm-hmm.
into that. And that's the band they always reminded me of the most was Bomb the Music Industry.
Yeah.
It was like the tongue-in-cheek, punky, chaotic, and I would agree, like the elements of hardcore being there too. Um, and it was just like fun. It was fun overall. It was pissed off, but it was creative about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've really enjoyed that about the unraveling of Pup the Band. And then here, I think the biggest difference for me is the songwriting got a little more mature in terms of the fact that it got introspective
Mm-hmm.
and it was a little less despairing and more philosophical, which I thought was an interesting twist considering the way that this thing
Mm-hmm.
sounds.
So I wish they would have, because I think you're right in the songwriting. I think it's a big difference, because they were always very tongue in cheek. Like there's even from the previous albums to the unraveling of Pup the Band, which is what I was most familiar with them. There's songs like on the album we were just talking, the unraveling, totally fine, great. There was a song about the guitar. I can't remember what the name of that one was, but I remember you specifically liked that song quite a bit. I think. Just
Matilda.
yes, because it was just a very interesting kind of like story. There was a lightheartedness to it that was very appealing. It was very charming, and it was felt less angry than their previous work had been. But they were always like rotating around this like we play like faster paced punk music. You might call it pop punk because there's a huge melodies in a lot of these choruses. So I think there was a really a certain lane that they were in, and maybe they felt like they were stuck in, because I feel like the songwriting became something that's, I'm not going to say it's not like punk style songwriting, but the subject matter doesn't tend to be. To me, a lot of punk music and that kind of stuff is very outward. I'm telling all of you why you're wrong, and
Yes.
there, I'm sure people are going to give me like very specific examples of where that's not the case, but in general, I don't think you're going to find that it's different than how I'm saying it. I love that they went that direction where they looked a little more inward. I appreciate that. That's why I love, a lot of Americana albums like Jason Isbell. One of my favorite songwriters. That's all he does basically is introspection. So that's what I prefer. What I didn't like, I think, is the same thing you're going to say you didn't like is, well, I appreciate the chaos that Pup would bring on their past albums and stuff. I felt like it was very controlled. Pup is on the loose on this album.
Yeah, definitely. And I, I,
Mhm.
I think the really great distinction that you draw, and yeah, again, anyone can come in here and hopefully you're leaving your comments on the video, like and subscribe.
Mhm.
Um, but anyone in the comments could definitely say, like, well, there's this whole history of punk that was self-loathing and all of that. But I think the difference is, like you said, criticism in punk is usually directed at an external source and usually like an authority figure or
Mhm.
a repressive state apparatus. And here, the repressive state apparatus is like the self. To kind of like shout it out, you've got the song Hunger for Death. And
Mhm.
these are pretty like straightforward on the nose lyrics here. Fuck everyone on this planet except for you. I've been on a rampage. Whatever's wrong with my heart must be wrong with yours too. You've been feeling satanic, like why bother with God? He doesn't bother with you. So fuck everyone on this planet except for you.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, so here we're clearly getting into this like kind of pity party, self-destructive kind of mentality, and misery loves company. So you've found someone that's got this like similarly existentially bleak outlook. And it's just like in that instance, it doesn't it's similar to what we said about like Viagra Boys, where
Hmm.
none of it was necessarily like condemning or celebrating. It was just like kind of interrogating the situation.
Hmm.
Not judging, but discerning. And this song feels like this album really feels like discernment. There's not necessarily like you can have a judgmental thing like, oh,
Hmm.
fuck everybody else. But that comes more from like an emotional hurt than necessarily something concrete. And I found that a lot on this album was just like a lot of self-reflective, very personal material that I think I almost felt the opposite of you, where you were like, things were a little more controlled in the past and things are kind of loose here. This actually felt a little more put together, at least conceptually,
Hmm.
than Unraveling a Pup the Band. That was like playing the solo for Matilda on the namesake guitar, and it sounds like shit. Like, that was a fantastic touch. And
Yeah.
there really wasn't anything like that on this one, which is fine. But I think that's kind of where I had trouble jumping the gap. I'm like,
Hmm.
you've still got this lo-fi sound. You've still got this like really shitty production stuff. So you're keeping a lot of like characteristics of your sound, but changing a very fundamental part of it, which is the shit you're writing about and singing about,
Hmm.
taking that in a new direction. And it didn't like always completely gel for me.
That so I don't think I had a problem. I can't think of a problem I had anywhere with the lyrics. As far as like I thought
Not a
that
problem,
didn't fit
no.
there. Yeah. So what I had the issue with, and I think you explained it better, like more of kind of how I feel about it than how I said it. So it's when I say like it felt more chaotic and it just felt like they were trying to put a hat on a hat. Like I finally have a reason to use that term, and it just struck me. So they were trying, like, it just felt like there was just too much going on in a lot of places. And there was, the lyrics were on one beat, the music was on another. And a lot of times that can work for me. Like, I've been listening to a ton of Tool, and like that's kind of exactly what they do. It's just like for some reason it just felt just too chaotic in places. Like, and maybe because that just didn't match up with the lyrics, so it was just made that difference feel even more extreme. But I think it would have been better to like tone down on a lot of the just craziness and put the focus on the lyrics, because like that verse you just read is fantastic. Like, how many punk bands are writing a verse like that? You know, it's just like they have a special talent for songwriting. And I think just missed a little bit with what everything they put behind it this time.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not saying like, well, they need
Hmm.
to become Jeff Buckley. Like, yeah, I'm not saying do a radical shift in like the
Hmm.
fundamentals of your sound. I think for me, it really did come. It was really mostly production wise. I think that one thing, because make no mistake, the music is great too,
Hmm.
rock solid punk. Fairly meat and potatoes, if you want to call it that, but in like a fun, clever way, high energy. None of that dipped. It's just the thing that kind of made it feel a little bit like a tale of two elements that didn't like the sauce kind of broke a little bit
Hmm.
with some of these like rich, heavier, less whimsical, personal, dramatic themes, and then the kind of lo-fi DIY sloppy
Hmm.
production that we get. There was just something about if they had stripped away that, if this had been like a really well produced, well mixed, like dispense with that and like really focus on making this thing, like take the great music that you make and turn it up and polish it up and turn it loose.
Hmm.
That would have been really interesting to hear, because the only Pup I've heard is all like sounds like it was recorded on a fucking iPhone and
Hmm.
edited in GarageBand. And that's again great for what it was doing with all the other stuff, especially unraveling a puppet band. It's just here you've got these solid musicians, this really like excellent music. I would say like worthy lyrics, and then this like production element on top of it. And it just the brew for me the pieces
Mhm.
didn't all totally sync up.
Yeah, that to me, I think that's a great way to explain it. I do think there was some really classic pup like songs on here. Um, Needed to hear it. Could have could have been on Unraveling of Pup the Band. Could have
Yes,
been on any of their other previous albums as well. Um, where else do we have here? So the Hunger for Death, like honestly, the lyrically wouldn't fit on the other ones, but how that musically sounded, like they've done a lot of stuff like that in the past where they do kind of slow it down. And then which one? Olive Garden was definitely not that. That might have been my least favorite song on the album.
agreed.
Actually, yeah, that one did not hit my eardrums in a good way whatsoever. And then what is it? Hallways, I think, is the other one that just when I heard them, I was like, oh, this could have been on one of the old albums. And I think it was Hallways that when I got to that, I thought I started looking because I was like, oh, did I get done with the album? Because I saw it was really short. It's like 35 minutes. So I was just listening to it on my headphones, wasn't really paying attention to like time and like how long had passed. So I was like, oh, was that it? Because it sounded like it could have been from another one.
And I will say in defense of Hallways, I agree, but I think the thing that kind of turned it around for me is like this is kind of the thesis statement of the album.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it literally contains the title of the album, but beyond that, it's one of the more personal, like this idea of like what the hell am I going to do if I can never see you anymore?
Mm-hmm.
The intrusive thoughts, the like thoughts of unaliving
Yeah.
oneself. Um, so there's a lot of like existential heft to it
Mm-hmm.
that again, I think just the way it was executed didn't like totally come off. Um, but I don't want it to sound like I'm super down on this album because
Mm-hmm.
all I've done is kind of
No,
feel
I was saying Hallways. I felt like sounds like it could have been on, like, if you ever listened to the song DVP by Pup, like it's on one of their previous albums, but it's fantastic. But I feel like that song is what kind of leads to Hallways.
okay. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought you were lumping in Hallways and Olive Garden, and I was like, I gotta take
No,
up
no,
for
no.
Hallways a little bit.
I was just going through the list song. Olive Garden was not included with it. What I just glanced over and I was like, I had to make sure I mentioned that was definitely my least favorite
Yeah,
song on the album.
no, for sure.
But the Get Dumber song with Jeff Rosenstock, I didn't really get a lot of Jeff Rosenstock, at least not any more than I was getting off the rest of the album.
No, and I agree, and it's because they're
Yeah.
already like pretty Jeff
Yeah.
Rosenstocky, pretty bomb the music industry.
Mm-hmm.
Like you hear it in the sort of charging, like how
Mm-hmm.
melodic that bomb the music industry
It's
is.
like it was like Brandy and Monica, Boy Is Mine.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
Peanut butter and chocolate are finally together. Um, but you definitely hear like the influence on the sound, and it I love that element of bomb the music industry and of pop where it's like melodic punk.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's such a great twist and a great sound. It's just like you throw Jeff Rosenstock in there, he's not really adding uh a, an element to the broth. It's like
Mm-hmm.
basil and a spice that's, kind of not complementary to basil, but like almost synonymous with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's basil light, it's basil adjacent. It's like, well, you got basil. Why don't you give something that offsets basil?
Mm-hmm.
It's giving basil. And I like it. It was a good song, but I did kind of want to, it would be interesting to kind of pick someone that would go in there, like when Japanese Breakfast does a song with Jeff Bridges.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't always have to be like, well, we did it to be funky and strange to subvert your expectations and blow your
Mm-hmm.
mind. It's just like finding someone that complements what it is you're trying to do there. And as it stands, it's like this could have been a Jeff Rosenstock thing on its own, and I would have bought it. It could have been Pup on its own, and I would have bought it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're together, and it's great, and it's an explosion of friendship. Um, but it was just like, yeah, like you said, you don't get much Jeff Rosenstock because
Yeah.
we already had Rosenstock at home. And I love Jeff Rosenstock, and I like Pup, and I like this album, This all sounds like just like shitting on it, and truly
Mhm.
it's not. Truly it's not. I think they're really talented musicians. I think they write like really solid punk songs. And I think a big thing that crystallized for me listening to this is punk more than any other genre, I think, is almost like unfairly and heavily pressured to grow up. I think
Mhm.
a lot of people want to be like, well, as you age, everybody becomes a little more Republican once they get money,
Mhm.
kind of like thing to it. Where it's like, well, as you age, you can't sustain that youthful ethos of like, I don't need anything but my guitar and a friend's couch to crash on. And like, oh, as you get more famous and you make more money, it's going to change your outlook on things and your politics will
Mhm.
change. And all of a sudden, I want to see you be a hypocrite because it's going to make me feel better about
Yeah.
myself. There's a lot of weird pressure on
Yeah.
punk to age. And a lot of people want to see him fail. And I think a lot of people just want to see what that would look like.
Mhm.
We saw what it looked like with Against Me. It went down like a lot of it, especially like Laura Jane Grace's journey with gender identity took it
Mhm.
in a whole new direction.
Mhm.
But I think there's a lot of pressure on like people are poking punk bands with a stick, being like, what are you gonna do next? You're 40. What are
Mhm.
you gonna do? You're 40. You're not a pissed off
So
teenager anymore.
I think punk bands should grow up, but individually they should grow up. Like punk music shouldn't grow up.
That's a great way of putting it.
You know what I mean? So, I don't want a 45-year-old guy. Like that's like when we listened to the Rolling Stones and Mick Jagger was talking about being 87 years old and going and picking up chicks. It's like, come on, dude.
Yeah.
Like they're just getting sent to your house. Like, get real.
Yeah.
So it's like it's I understand, like, why would you? I feel like you have to grow up. Now, you don't have to sell out. You don't have to be like, oh, I vote Republican now. You know what I mean? You can still keep the same viewpoints, but leave the anger to the younger folks that have the stamina for it. I feel like that's part of the thing with punk is like the torch gets passed. It'll never die because the torch, there's always something to be pissed off about. So the
Yeah,
torch just gets passed.
absolutely. And the issues change and like the
Hmm.
times change and like all of that. And I think that's great. And it kind of like took over in that way for folk because you had like Pete Seeger doing all this
Hmm.
political music. Um, Bob Dylan, and I think it kind of there was a pass. Oh God, there's a bug. There was kind of a passing of the baton from folk to punk in terms of the genre that's gonna carry that torch forward, and what comes after that, who knows? And then like within the genre, you've got it passing along down generations, and that's great. And I love the way you put it, where it's like you have to kind of grow up relative to what kind of band you are, and like the genre itself doesn't necessarily need to change, but you've got to find your place in it as you evolve.
Hmm.
Because yeah, some 45-year-old guy being like, overthrow the government, we don't need the banks, occupy
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A. Like, you're like, easy does it. You take your baby aspirin and your glands look a little swollen. Why don't you have a nap? But painting a picture of what my life will look like in 10 years. Um, but I agree with your sentiment that you grow in a way that's appropriate to you. You grow in a way that's meaningful to you. You don't just like age up, sell out, whatever, because there's pressure to do it. But that pressure is definitely there, I think, for punk more than any other genre. And for a band like PUP, which like still has that youthful, pissed off energy, if not used in the correct way, it could be kind of sad and pathetic, and it's not here. Again, I like the direction they went, where it was like, it's time to be self-critical. It's time to examine. And yeah, we're going to talk about other people, but we're really going to talk about like what we own and what's coming from us, and hopes and fears. And it's going to get like more personal and a little like there's a distance between you with something like Totally Fine or Matilda from
Hmm.
Unraveling a Pup the Band. And this invites you in a little more. Um, and the music remains like consistently high energy, melodic, tight. It's great. Again, I just wanted to see it really get a
Hmm.
chance for the nuances to shine, for nothing to get lost in the mix, for nothing to feel like too compressed or unwieldy. I
Hmm.
just wanted like give me a picture perfect mix of this music and this album, and it would take it not ending the episode, but just to kind of
Hmm.
skip ahead, it would take this from a stream it to a buy it.
Hmm. Yeah, I think we were on a fast track for a stream it on this one from both of us. I think it didn't get to the level of, I think I ended up enjoying the unraveling of Pup the Band. I think I enjoyed that album more than this one. So
Yeah.
it's hard to, like you said, it's hard to push this one up to a buy it. I think this is a pretty firm stream it. And I think and I also like the way you put it. It's like I think they need to age appropriate to, them. And I think, we bring the word up all the time, but the most important thing is authenticity. Because it's like people are going to know if you don't mean it. And
Yeah.
especially like there's the I don't know if there's a more critical music community than like punk music, maybe hardcore, honestly. Turnstile, just everybody, there's so many people that are like, it's not real hardcore music. It's like, yeah, well, they just like packed the main park in Baltimore, so they're doing okay,
Yeah.
and they're like it's music like people haven't really heard. So you can keep making the same thing that you heard Minor Threat do 30 years ago, but there's bands that evolve, you know what I mean? And it happens, and it's okay for that to happen. It's like you should evolve with them. Like as they age, you're aging too. Like, why are you going to sit there and listen? I'm not saying you can't listen to bands that are, full of 19 and 20-year-olds and full of piss and vinegar. Like, I'm not saying you can't listen to that, but it's, you kind of have to listen to music that's relevant to you. There's a reason that there's not as many people my age that love Bruce Springsteen as there are like my dad's age.
Right.
Is like, that was music that was made at their time and aged with them. So it was relevant to them as the years went on. So as like Bruce was in his 40s and 50s and 60s, so were they. He was writing about the same things they were experiencing. So I think it's important that bands age up, but you don't have to leave the genre. It's just, you have to do exactly like you say, is find your spot. I think I feel like this is, general good advice for punk bands, but Pup clearly has a ton in the tank. So I'm interested to see if they, because I think I've honestly seen some of the same kind of criticisms of this album like that we're expressing here. I think there's a lot of people that are like, just wish it was a little cleaner. We just wish it had, it had the Pup energy, but it just felt like that didn't have it. They put it in a container that it wouldn't fit.
And yeah, they do have a ton in the tank. It's still high energy. It's still feisty. That's all great. I don't want the takeaway to be like these fucking
Mm-hmm.
losers won't just grow up. Um, but I do think that maybe what maturity and growing up or blah, whatever you want to say for a band like this looks like is take your production to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
Try a couple new things. What do they say about wrestling? It's like a wrestler, go away for 6 months, learn a new hold, come back, like get in shape, learn a new hold, come back. I I think there's that sweet spot between like, growing up, aging, maturing, whatever, and evolving your music. And it's a very delicate balancing act, but I think you gotta try. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not like they didn't try hard on this album. I think they achieved absolutely what they set out to do.
Mm-hmm.
I just to me, again, it feels like an oversight to be like, we make this really solid music. The rhythm section is tight. They can like turn on a dime in terms of like time signatures or like
Mm-hmm.
these dynamic shifts. Really, really great. So you have this great music, you can do all these things, and then you've got this stuff you're writing about that's like very worthy. And you don't want that to get lost in the shuffle either. I think you owe it to yourself to be like, we're gonna now enter a phase where we're gonna like care a little more about studio perfectionism. And even if you're
Mm-hmm.
not a perfectionist, just like reaching for a different level of excellence to match the level of excellence that you've got in your music. Like match that. Like I understand like, well, our ethos has always been lo-fi. It's like you can just try it once, and if it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
work, then I'll eat my own ass and
Mm-hmm.
you guys go back to what you're doing. But it would have just been kind of cool to see them take their music as seriously in the editing room as they did clearly when they were writing it and
Mm-hmm.
performing it.
Yeah. And I think you don't have to lose the energy. I think that might be the concern it probably always is the concern with bands like that, that, you know, when you step up into that is like when you start looking more polished, people are just going to think you don't have the edge anymore. And I think they've got the talent to overcome that. So I hope they do. And when they come out with another album, I'll sit there and listen to that one. We'll give them another shot. But for this one, I'm going to say stream it. I think if you're already a PUP fan, you're probably going to find a lot of stuff you like in this. So like, I certainly, overall, I liked the album. Like, I probably more than, I would say 65 to 70% liked the things they did on the album, and maybe 30% that I didn't. So overall, it's a stream it for me. You know, I think the unraveling of PUP the band was an absolute buy it for me at the time, and I did buy it. But it's, for me on this one, it's a stream it.
Agreed. It's a stream it for me. It's a short album that, if I'm being honest, does feel a little longer than it actually is. It's like a cool 32. And somehow it did feel a little longer, not necessarily a slog, but certain songs were like, well, I've got the idea. Now you got to do something with it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you can't sit there and say any of this was bad. It just didn't really grip me the way that other albums this year, or the unraveling of PUP the band. Like, I remember hearing that and being like, this is so refreshing,
Mm-hmm.
because it's so, come on, gang, we're getting together and making an album. It was like the Muppets, the Little Rascals
Yeah.
come together and make an album. And that really, really worked. It felt a little too much like Go Back to the Well on that, while kind of getting a little more serious about the things we're singing about. But I would still say PUP is a band worth checking out. Unraveling a PUP the band, highly recommend. And you should listen to this one. You should stream this. This is a stream
Mm-hmm.
it. Because I'd be curious to hear what people think. Maybe the aesthetic works for them. You should listen to both Unraveling a PUP the band and this, and tell me if you think there's something that we missed
Mm-hmm.
between albums where it works just fine. But I think it's that failure to kind of like clear the bar right at the end, where I'm like, this could have been great, but as it stands,
Mm-hmm.
this is good.
Yeah, that's I would fully agree with that. And the folks can go ahead and hop in the comments and let us know once they listen to the album. We really would like to hear what you think about this one, because the more I think about it, I'm like, there's, you know, I do love PUP. I love the band, and I just like, it's hard to figure out what exactly it is about this that I don't like. I think it's the production. I think it's kind of exactly what Alex was saying. But let us know if you felt the same way, if you think we're idiots. We'd love to hear it either way. And where can they do that, Alex?
Well, folks, why don't you step on down to the old idiot chamber at youtube.com/C/out on that line, folks. Let me tell you something. Ain't much left of me now, as Blackberry Smoke would say. So for a limited time only, you got to get your buns to the old bun smacking factory that we've got going on the channel. Listen. I have access to the metrics for the podcast. As a podcast through Anchor, Spotify, we are on Spotify. We never plug on the YouTube that you should go to the Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, most of you are on the YouTube. Therefore, we should be driving the traffic to the Spotify. But clearly, you've grown addicted to our visage. You need to put a face to our words, and we think that's fantastic. So since most of you are coming through YouTube, but not all of you are subscribed, we'd like to change that today. We would like you to subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you click the bell, because your notifications need to be on, so that when new stuff comes out, you hear about it, you can watch it, you can leave comments. Hello,
Mm-hmm.
ding dong, bing bong, what's up? You get in the comments, you mix it up. Those are very helpful to us, to the algorithm. It's all for the algorithm. Give the video a like. It's very affirming. That's for us. That's for the ego.
Mm-hmm.
Has no real bearing on metrics that I understand, but it's nice to see. You know, we just got all kinds of great stuff. Keen as a motherfucking bean over here at the old Idjit box. YouTube.com/C/out on that line. You sweet little peaches. I'll see you there. Woo!
Beautiful as always. Till next time.